Most seniors are unknowingly destroying their own hair follicles and throwing away hundreds of dollars a year because they believe seven massive, scientifically debunked lies about their gray hair. You look in the mirror at those silver strands and probably think it is just the inevitable, unstoppable ticking clock of old age, or perhaps you are secretly terrified that a stressful year permanently drained your color overnight. But the painful truth is that society, the cosmetic industry, and even your well meaning friends have fed you a steady diet of misinformation about what those silver threads actually mean. The problem you are facing with your changing hair is compounded by these pervasive myths, leaving you feeling frustrated, confused, and sometimes even ashamed of your own biology. But here is the hidden culprit that almost no one talks about. The graying process is not just a passive surrender to time, it is an active, dynamic biological process driven by microscopic cellular exhaustion and the buildup of natural metabolic waste right inside your scalp. Today, we are going to change the narrative completely. We are going to strip away the fiction and dive deep into the fascinating, empowering truth by breaking down the seven most common misunderstandings seniors have about gray hair. By the end of our time together, you will have a completely new science backed understanding of what is happening on your head, along with practical, everyday fixes to protect your scalp and help you feel incredibly proud of the reflection in your mirror. Before we dive into the first of these seven vital truths, I want to take a quick moment to welcome you. If you appreciate honest, evidence based conversations about the realities of aging, the kind of senior health tips that mainstream doctors often overlook in rushed 15-minute appointments, please consider subscribing. We are building a wonderful, supportive family here. And to get our conversation started, I would love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. It is always so beautiful to see how far our shared journey toward better health reaches across the globe. The first massive illusion we need to shatter is the pervasive belief that gray hair is solely and entirely caused by the sheer, unstoppable passage of time, a simple decay that you have absolutely no control over. The truth is far more complex and far more deeply connected to how you nourish your body every single day. While chronological age plays an undeniable role in the natural exhaustion of the pigment producing cells in your hair follicles, there is a hidden chemical process at work. Your hair is literally bleaching itself from the inside out. To understand this, we have to look intimately at cellular biology. Your hair follicles naturally produce trace amounts of hydrogen peroxide, which is a normal metabolic byproduct of living. When you were younger, an enzyme in your body called catalase efficiently broke down this hydrogen peroxide into harmless water and oxygen. But as we age, our natural production of the catalase enzyme plummets. A landmark study published in the FASEB journal, the Journal of the Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology, found that the graying of human hair is driven by massive oxidative stress, specifically demonstrating that a severe decline in catalase leads to the toxic accumulation of hydrogen peroxide, which fundamentally destroys the production of melanin, the pigment that gives your hair its rich color. This concept perfectly mirrors ancient wisdom. In traditional Chinese medicine, they have long believed that the vitality of your hair reflects the deep underlying health of your vital life force, your qi, and your kidney essence. Western science is simply showing us the microscopic mechanics of how that vital energy depletes through oxidative stress. Imagine your hair follicles as tiny, bustling factories without enough workers to clear out the toxic chemical waste. The machinery literally rusts and breaks down, shutting down color production permanently. The actionable takeaway here is to aggressively support your body's ability to fight this internal rusting process. While you cannot stop the clock, you can optimize the environment in which your cells live. Swap out heavily processed inflammatory snacks for foods naturally rich in antioxidants and enzymes. Incorporate dark leafy greens, sweet potatoes, raw almonds, and fresh berries into your daily meals, as these contain vital nutrients that help neutralize free radicals and support your cellular environment. You cannot reverse the bleaching that has already taken place, but by profoundly reducing the overall oxidative burden on your body, you are protecting the longevity and health of the pigment producing cells you still have left. Moving seamlessly to the second great myth, we encounter one of the most stubborn and physically damaging habits in the history of personal grooming. The terrifying idea that if you pluck one single gray hair, three more will magically sprout in its place. We have all been there in the quiet of our bathrooms. You see that wiry, rebellious silver strand sticking straight up, catching the light, and the temptation to grab the tweezers is almost overwhelming. But the fear of a multiplying hydra of gray hair stops you in your tracks. Let us put this specific fear to rest with hard science while simultaneously giving you a very real reason to put the tweezers down. Plucking one hair absolutely does not cause surrounding hairs to turn gray. Each hair follicle acts as an isolated, independent organ with its own delicate blood supply, its own distinct growth cycle, and its own unique population of pigment-producing melanocytes. What happens in one follicle does not genetically or chemically reprogram the neighboring follicles to suddenly give up their color. However, plucking is still a terrible, destructive idea, but for a completely different reason. When you forcibly rip a hair from its root, you are causing severe microscopic trauma to the dermal papilla, the living, breathing tissue at the very base of the follicle. Over time, this repeated plucking causes profound inflammation and permanent subcutaneous scarring. A comprehensive clinical study published in the Journal of Investigative Dermatology demonstrated that repeated physical trauma to the hair follicle, such as habitual mechanical plucking, directly induces apoptosis, which is the scientific term for programmed cell death in the follicular tissue. This leads not to more gray hair, but to permanent hair loss and localized, irreversible bald spots. Imagine ripping a delicate plant out of the soil by its roots over and over again, and eventually the soil becomes so damaged, hardened, and scarred that it becomes entirely incapable of growing anything at all. The reason people mistakenly think plucking causes more gray hair is simply an optical illusion of timing. The adjacent hairs were likely already destined by their own biological clocks to lose their pigment around the same time. And when the plucked hair finally musters the energy to grow back, it is shorter, stiffer, and sticks straight out, making it far more noticeable against your scalp. The actionable takeaway for this point is incredibly simple, but crucial for the long-term density of your hair. Step away from the tweezers. If a rogue gray hair is driving you completely crazy and you feel you absolutely must remove it to feel like yourself today, swap the violent trauma of plucking for the gentle precision of trimming. Use small grooming scissors to carefully snip the silver hair off at the base near the scalp. By doing this, you will save your precious follicles from permanent scarring and preserve the overall thickness and volume of your hair as you navigate the beautiful journey of aging. Our journey brings us to the third incredibly frustrating misunderstanding, which happens to be a very expensive one. The seductive promise made by countless supplement companies that you can completely reverse your gray hair and magically restore your original youth simply by popping a handful of copper supplements, zinc pills, or specialized B vitamins. The internet is absolutely flooded with advertisements featuring miraculous before and after photos, preying on our deep, vulnerable desire to turn back the hands of time. It is vital to approach these grandiose claims with a heavy dose of scientific skepticism and a deep understanding of your own anatomy. Let us look closely at the actual biology. It is indeed true that severe clinical nutritional deficiencies can lead to premature graying in very specific rare cases. The complex chemical pathway that produces melanin requires certain raw materials, including copper and zinc, to function properly. However, for the vast majority of seniors experiencing normal age-related changes, a lack of copper is absolutely not the primary reason their hair is turning white. The real underlying issue is the permanent natural depletion of melanocyte stem cells located in the hair follicle bulge. Once those highly specialized stem cell populations are completely exhausted due to decades of living, aging, and surviving oxidative stress, the pigment factory is closed permanently, and no amount of raw materials will force it to reopen. A definitive rigorously controlled study published in the International Journal of Trichology deeply investigated the relationship between premature hair graying and trace element levels in the blood. The researchers found that while a statistically significant percentage of young patients with severe premature graying, roughly 30%, showed markedly lower serum levels of copper, zinc, or vitamin B12, aggressively supplementing these exact nutrients only offered partial temporary color reversal in those specific clinically deficient young individuals. For older adults experiencing natural age-related graying, dumping excess copper into their digestive systems did absolutely nothing to restore color simply because the melanocyte stem cells were already gone. Imagine pouring premium high octane gasoline into a beautiful classic car that has had its engine completely removed. It does not matter how pure or expensive the fuel is, the car is never going to run. Furthermore, blindly taking heavy metal supplements like copper without strict medical supervision can lead to dangerous, life threatening toxicity, potentially causing severe liver damage, gastrointestinal distress, and debilitating neurological issues. The actionable takeaway here is to fiercely protect your wallet and your internal organs from predatory marketing. Swap out those expensive, unregulated miracle supplements for a simple, honest conversation with your primary care physician. Ask your doctor to run a comprehensive blood panel during your next physical examination. If you genuinely have a diagnosed vitamin B12 or mineral deficiency, treat it with your doctor's guidance to improve your overall systemic health, boost your energy levels, and protect your nerve function. But do not place the heavy burden of expectation on those vitamins to magically resurrect the pigment in your silver hair. Acceptance of your biology is far cheaper and infinitely more peaceful than chasing a physiological impossibility. If you are finding this deep dive into the truth about your body empowering, and if these science-backed tips are bringing you a sense of clarity, please take a brief moment to give this video a thumbs up. It truly helps our community grow. It tells the algorithm that this information matters, and it ensures that this vital health education reaches other seniors who might be sitting at home struggling with these exact same questions and anxieties in silence. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us continue providing this level of research and care. The fourth misunderstanding we need to gently dismantle brings us to one of the most dramatized concepts in all of popular culture: the enduring legend of Marie Antoinette syndrome, or the terrifying belief that a sudden, severe shock, a catastrophic trauma, or a period of intense, crushing grief can turn your entire head of hair white overnight. We have all seen it depicted in movies, we have read about it in sweeping historical novels, and many of us secretly harbor the fear that one highly stressful life event will instantly strip us of our youth and vitality. The fundamental biology of hair growth, however, proves that an overnight, instant color change along the entire length of the hair shaft is an absolute physical impossibility. The hair that is visible above your scalp, the hair you brush and style every morning, is composed entirely of dead, fully keratinized cells. Once the hair is extruded from the living follicle beneath the skin, its cellular structure and its pigmentation are locked in place permanently. There is no biological mechanism, no vascular blood system, and no hidden nerve pathway that can reach up into the dead hair shaft and magically suck the color out of it while you sleep. However, this absolutely does not mean that the deep connection between your emotional stress and your gray hair is entirely a myth. It is just a much slower, much more profound, and deeply systemic process than the legends suggest. When you experience profound chronic psychological stress, your body releases massive, sustained levels of cortisol and triggers an unrelenting systemic fight or flight response. This invisible chemical storm profoundly impacts the delicate living tissues nestled deep within the hair bulb. A fascinating, groundbreaking study conducted by brilliant researchers at Columbia University, published in the highly respected journal eLife, definitively proved that psychological stress can indeed cause hair to gray rapidly, but it happens microscopically over the course of weeks and months as the new hair is actively formed. The researchers developed a revolutionary technique to digitize and quantify tiny, almost invisible variations in hair pigmentation along single strands of human hair. They discovered that periods of intense psychosocial stress perfectly correlated with unpigmented, starkly gray segments of the growing hair shaft. Even more astonishingly, they documented remarkable cases where, when the intense stress was completely removed, such as a patient taking a deeply relaxing, restorative 2 week vacation, the hair actually reverted to its natural dark color at the root as it continued to grow. Imagine looking closely at the rings of an ancient tree trunk. A harsh, drought filled winter leaves a distinct, visible, scarred mark on the tree's growth pattern, just as a stressful season leaves a visible silver mark on the timeline of your hair shaft. But it takes time for that silver mark to grow out and become visible to the naked eye. The rapid overnight whitening people report in dramatic historical anecdotes is actually a severe medical condition called telogen effluvium, where immense physiological stress causes all the healthy pigmented hairs to suddenly enter the resting phase and fall out in a matter of days, leaving only the pre-existing, deeply rooted, coarser gray hairs behind, creating the sudden, terrifying optical illusion of turning white overnight. The actionable takeaway here is to deeply acknowledge and respect the profound impact of your mental state on your physical biology. Chronic stress is quietly, relentlessly weathering your body at the cellular level, right down to the pigment in your hair. You must actively prioritize daily stress management techniques as if your life depends on it, because your quality of life certainly does. Swap your late night habit of doom scrolling through endless anxiety inducing news broadcasts for 10 minutes of deep diaphragmatic breathing, a gentle stretching routine, or listening to calming, healing music. Protect your peace of mind with fierce dedication, because your cells are quite literally listening to your thoughts and reacting to your emotional pain. As we turn to our fifth revelation, we confront the incredibly frustrating texture trap. If your hair is transitioning, you have probably noticed that your new gray hair behaves completely differently than your pigmented hair used to. It feels wildly wiry, it seems unruly and untamable, it utterly refuses to hold a familiar style, and it often feels uncomfortably rough and dry to the touch. Because of this stark textural difference, almost everyone instinctively assumes that gray hair is structurally thicker, stronger, and inherently coarser than naturally colored hair. This is a massive fundamental misunderstanding that leads directly to incredibly damaging, counterproductive hair care routines. On a microscopic structural level, gray hair is actually finer, more delicate, and structurally weaker than your pigmented hair. The complete absence of melanin, which usually provides structural integrity, makes the central core of the hair shaft, known as the medulla, significantly more fragile and prone to breakage. So, why on earth does it feel so rough, wiry, and coarse? The answer lies not in the hair shaft itself, but deep within the changing ecosystem of your scalp. As we gracefully age, our entire endocrine system undergoes a massive shift, and our production of vital hormones changes dramatically. This systemic shift causes a severe, noticeable reduction in the activity of our sebaceous glands, the tiny essential glands in our scalp that produce natural, moisturizing, protective oils. A comprehensive, long-term dermatological study published in the British Journal of Dermatology meticulously measured sebum excretion rates across different age demographics. The researchers found that natural sebum production declines sharply by up to 40% or more in older adults, particularly in women following menopause. Without this constant natural coating of rich protective oil flowing down the hair shaft, the outermost layer of the hair, called the cuticle, becomes severely parched, lifted, and physically frayed. When those microscopic cuticle scales stand up, instead of lying flat and smooth, the hair strands catch on one another, they tangle effortlessly, and they feel incredibly coarse and abrasive to the touch. The lifted cuticle also completely loses its ability to reflect light smoothly, which is precisely why unmoisturized gray hair can look so dull, matte, and lifeless. Imagine a damp, well-hydrated kitchen sponge. When it is full of moisture, it is soft, pliable, yielding, and smooth. If you leave that exact same sponge out in the hot sun until it is bone dry, it becomes rigid, scratchy, inflexible, and rough. The fundamental structure of the sponge has not changed at all. Its internal moisture content has simply evaporated. Treating your fragile gray hair like it is thick and tough by violently scrubbing it with harsh, stripping, volumizing shampoos or subjecting it to excessive daily heat styling will only shatter that delicate, dehydrated cuticle even further, making the wiry texture exponentially worse. The actionable takeaway here is to completely and unapologetically overhaul your daily shower routine. You must manually and intentionally replace the vital moisture your aging scalp is no longer capable of producing on its own. Swap out any clear, aggressively foaming, clarifying shampoos for rich, dense, cream-based, completely sulfate-free cleansers that wash without stripping. Furthermore, swap your lightweight daily conditioner for a heavy, deeply penetrating, intensely hydrating conditioner, or commit to using a weekly restorative hair mask containing natural, heavy lipids like pure argan oil, cold pressed jojoba oil, or shea butter. By intensely and consistently moisturizing the hair shaft, you will force that lifted cuticle to smooth down and lie flat, miraculously transforming that wiry, unruly, frustrating silver into incredibly soft, elegant, manageable, and highly reflective hair. Our sixth point addresses the dye dilemma, a deeply ingrained societal expectation that has weighed heavily on the shoulders of seniors, particularly women, for entirely too long. For generations, the default unspoken societal rule has been to frantically cover up gray hair the absolute second it appears, viewing it as a flaw to be hidden rather than a natural progression to be accepted. This immense cultural pressure has led to the widespread, normalized belief that harsh chemical hair dyes are the only acceptable professional way to manage the appearance of aging, and that pouring these highly reactive chemical cocktails directly over our porous scalps every 4 to 6 weeks for decades is a completely harmless beauty ritual. We need to look very closely and very honestly at the long-term biological cost of this relentless routine. Permanent hair dye is not a gentle cosmetic. It is an aggressive, destructive chemical process. In order to permanently deposit artificial color deep into the cortex of the hair, the dye must first use strong, corrosive alkalizing agents, typically industrial ammonia, to violently blow open the tightly woven protective cuticle. Then it utilizes high volume hydrogen peroxide to deeply penetrate the hair shaft, chemically obliterate whatever natural pigment happens to be left, and forcefully pack the artificial dye molecules inside. Over time, this repeated monthly chemical assault permanently destroys the hair's natural porosity, leaving the strands utterly brittle, constantly snapping off at the ends, and severely exacerbating the terrible dryness and wiry texture we just discussed. But the profound concerns go much deeper than just the cosmetic texture of the hair. While the multi-billion-dollar cosmetic industry adamantly insists their deeply profitable products are perfectly safe, independent, massive epidemiological studies paint a much more complex, concerning picture regarding long-term, decades-long bodily exposure to these specific chemicals. A major, highly publicized, and incredibly important study conducted by the National Institutes of Health and published in the International Journal of Cancer analyzed the detailed health data of over 45,000 women over a significant period. The researchers found a statistically significant association between the frequent long-term use of permanent hair dyes and chemical straighteners and a slightly higher risk of developing certain aggressive hormone-related cancers, such as breast cancer, when compared directly to women who chose not to use these chemical products. While scientists are careful to emphasize that the overall absolute risk remains relatively low and that hair dye alone is not the sole primary cause of cancer, the undeniable data clearly indicates that these potent chemicals are indeed absorbed directly through the highly vascular skin of the scalp, entering the bloodstream, and they absolutely do interact with our systemic internal biology. Imagine repeatedly painting a crumbling, fragile wall The fresh coat of bright paint might make it look vibrant, new, and acceptable for a few short weeks, but the harsh caustic chemicals in the paint are actually degrading the delicate plaster underneath every single day, and eventually the wall itself begins to structurally fail and collapse. The actionable takeaway here is to deeply empower yourself with safer, gentler alternatives, and more importantly, to boldly challenge the fundamental assumption that you must dye your hair at all to be considered beautiful or relevant. If you are exhausted by the relentless chemical damage, the constant expense, and the endless anxiety of root touch ups, swap the harsh ammonia based permanent dyes for a high quality, deeply pigmented, purple toned shampoo designed specifically to gently neutralize brassy yellow tones in natural silver hair. Or consider transitioning to completely natural plant based henna or gentle deposit only demi permanent glosses that do not physically blow open the cuticle. Most powerfully, you might choose to step off the exhausting dyeing treadmill entirely, allowing your natural, healthy, brilliantly silver hair to shine. Embracing your natural color removes a massive, unnecessary chemical and toxic burden from your aging body and allows your hair to finally regain its natural, undisturbed strength, softness, and integrity. Finally, we arrive at the seventh and perhaps most emotionally damaging misunderstanding we must completely eradicate: the deep seated, culturally programmed psychological belief that the moment your hair turns gray, it is a definitive, undeniable biological signal that your entire body is failing, that your internal vitality is gone, and that you are officially, irreversibly, and fundamentally old. This is a profoundly heavy, deeply unfair burden to carry through the latter half of your life. Our culture obsessively worships the aesthetics of youth, and we are constantly, relentlessly bombarded with media messaging that falsely equates a simple loss of follicular pigmentation with a total loss of worth, capability, and systemic health. We internalize this toxic messaging deeply, leading to a quiet, heavy despair every single time we catch our reflection in the mirror. But rigorous medical science completely, unequivocally disagrees with this cruel cultural prejudice. Gray hair is a highly localized, completely superficial phenomenon driven exclusively by the specific microscopic exhaustion of melanocyte stem cells in the upper layers of the skin. It is absolutely not a systemic mirror reflecting the deep health of your internal organs, the strength of your cardiovascular system, or the sharpness of your cognitive function. A massive, definitive, and incredibly reassuring longitudinal study published in the prestigious journals of gerontology meticulously examined the comprehensive aging metrics of thousands of diverse adults over several decades. The researchers rigorously compared the onset, speed, and extent of gray hair against deep systemic markers of true biological aging, including heart disease, prevalence, lung capacity, bone mineral density, and overall mortality rates. Their scientific conclusion was striking, beautiful, and completely undeniable. They found absolutely no direct, significant correlation whatsoever between the amount of gray hair a person has on their head and their true internal biological age, their statistical risk of mortality, or the robust functional health of their internal organs. Having a full shimmering head of pure white hair at age 60 or 70 absolutely does not mean your heart is weaker, your lungs are frailer, or your brilliant brain is slower than someone of the exact same age who, through sheer genetic luck or chemical dye, still has dark hair. The localized graying process is entirely fundamentally distinct from the systemic aging of your vital life-giving systems. Imagine looking at a magnificent towering oak tree in the late autumn. The fragile leaves on the outermost branches may have changed color, dried up, and fallen away, changing the tree's external superficial appearance entirely. But the massive solid trunk, the incredibly deep nourishing roots, and the core unyielding structural strength of the tree remain just as robust, powerful, and alive as they were in the vibrant days of spring. Your white hair is simply the beautiful changing of the leaves. It has absolutely nothing to do with the enduring strength of your deep roots. The actionable takeaway here requires a profound, liberating shift in your daily psychological mindset. You must actively, consciously divorce the external color of your hair from your internal perception of your physical health and your personal worth. Swap the heavy, draining anxiety over your gray hair for a joyful daily commitment to a 30-minute brisk walk to physically strengthen your beautiful beating heart. Swap the time spent worrying about your roots for time spent lifting light weights to preserve your vital bone density and muscle mass. Nurture your social connections, feed your mind, and cultivate your inner peace. When you finally realize that your beautiful silver hair is just a localized biological quirk and absolutely not a systemic death knell, you completely free yourself to live vibrantly, powerfully, and joyfully in the remarkable body you have today. We have covered a beautiful, expansive, and deeply important terrain today, pulling back the heavy curtain on the intricate cellular biology and the deeply hidden, liberating truths behind our changing hair. Let us quickly, simply recap the actionable steps you can take starting right this very moment to fiercely protect your health, your peace of mind, and your unshakable confidence. Remember to flood your daily diet with antioxidant-rich, colorful foods to actively combat the internal oxidative stress that naturally bleaches your hair from the inside out. Throw away those damaging tweezers for good and commit to gently trimming rogue hairs to prevent permanent, irreversible follicular scarring. Save your hard-earned money by skipping the unproven, potentially dangerous miracle supplements and instead consult your trusted doctor for a proper scientific blood panel to check for genuine, treatable nutritional deficiencies. Deeply acknowledge the profound, undeniable impact of psychological stress on your cellular health and intentionally implement daily relaxation techniques to soothe and calm your overworked nervous system. Completely change your shower routine to include rich, heavy, hydrating conditioners that manually replenish the vital oils your aging scalp is no longer producing, perfectly smoothing the lifted cuticles of your fragile new hair. Protect your entire body from unnecessary, risky chemical burdens by seriously reconsidering the frequent use of harsh permanent dyes and bravely explore safer, gentler alternatives. And most importantly, deeply reframe your mindset. Recognize once and for all that the color of your hair is absolutely, unequivocally not a measure of your internal vitality, your worth, or your true biological age. You have so much beautiful control over your health, far more than society, the media, or the cosmetic industry wants you to believe. Aging is not a tragic process of fading away into the invisible background. It is a profound, beautiful process of distillation. You are steadily becoming the most authentic, unfiltered, unapologetic version of yourself. Your silver hair is not a sign of surrender or weakness. Think of the magnificent silverback gorilla in the wild. The silver hair is a literal, respected evolutionary marker of maturity, survival, immense strength, and natural leadership. Your gray hair is your magnificent crown of accumulated wisdom. It physically represents every deep laugh line, every shed tear, every massive challenge you have overcome, and every beautiful, breathtaking sunrise you have been privileged to witness. You have earned every single shimmering strand of it. You are vibrant, you are incredibly strong, and your independence and joy are the most valuable assets you possess. As someone who has the profound privilege of reading the beautiful stories and confessions you share with our community, I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this journey. Which of these 7 misunderstandings surprised you the most today? Have you struggled deeply with the emotional decision to dye your hair, or have you found the incredible peace of fully embracing the silver? Please share your stories in the comments below, or if you prefer a more private space, please send them directly to our community email. Your personal experiences are incredibly valuable, and sharing them helps everyone in this community feel a little less alone and a little more understood. If you found this deep dive into the science of your health empowering, please give this video a like and hit that subscribe button, because your health, your confidence, and your vibrant future are absolutely worth fighting for. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with me today. And always remember, true lasting vitality does not come from the superficial color of your hair, but from the unyielding, passionate fire in your spirit. Keep that fire burning bright